Welcome back, folks, to the Golfing Dad's Halfway House. This week, our topic has been a big topic of this week that has been an age-old question in baseball. Lifetime bans from the Hall of Fame. It was announced this
from the
week.
game. It was not from the Hall of Fame. It's from the game.
Well, it's banned from Major League Baseball. So It was announced this week that the commissioner, Rob Manfred, has made the decision to lift the lifetime bans of multiple former MLB players. So that's what we're discussing tonight. And in a different fashion, we are going to have a bare knuckles drag-out fight between Dave and Steve here, who are our baseball experts. Let's be honest. You two have more baseball knowledge than I do on this. And you both have opinions on this. One, Dave, who is a diehard Phillies fan, which respect to being a diehard Phillies fan, is pro this, thinking that this should have always happened. And then we have Steve, who is a diehard Red Sox fan. I'm just leaving it at that. Who is against this, just like every other Red Sox fan is against everything that's not Red Sox Nation. He also is against playing anywhere in the field and only wants to DH. Yeah, I went there.
And he's also against child care for children by other PGA pros.
I'm not against that. I thought it was great.
He also kicks puppies.
Wow.
But no, we're not going there with this. So we're going to leave
Me
this
and Don
off.
Johnson, I guess, huh? Or me and
Oh,
Don
yes,
Johnson.
you and Don Johnson.
Just get the long jacket and go full Miami Vice. We're going to lead this off. Steve,
It's my gold jacket.
Yeah, we're going to let you lead this off, Steve. And just to start off, leave your opening statements of why you think this ban should not have been lifted and should still be intact.
There are certain moves that were made today that I actually agree with. Shoeless Joe Jackson should have been lifted years ago. He was found innocent in a court of law by a jury of his peers and had been serving a lifetime ban and died in the 1950s. And we're talking almost 75 years later that Shoeless Joe finally gets lifted. And at this point, if the Veterans Committee does not put Shoeless Joe Jackson in the Hall of Fame this year, it is a travesty to the game. Pete Rose bet on the game. He's admitted to betting on the game. He compromised the integrity of the game. And I know Dave's argument is going to be, well, he did it as a manager. Well, even as a manager, you have the ability to move the line, whether it's the suicide squeeze for a bunt to push the line one way or another in your favor. And as far as I'm concerned, if you are blind enough to walk past the sign in the locker room that talks about betting on the game and everything that you've done to what it entails, I think this is a sad day for baseball. It's a sad day for what Bart Giamatti did and what he had to go through when making this decision. And I don't think, based on how Shoeless Joe was treated, other players and other members of the front office were treated all along, I don't think that Pete Rose, they shouldn't have, to give him the opportunity to get in the Hall of Fame now that he has passed away, shouldn't happen.
So I will say 17 players, bans were lifted. 5 of them, not just Pete Rose included in this 5, were for gambling or betting on sports. All right, Dave. Steve got to say his piece.
First
What's
off,
your reasoning?
Shoeless Joe, I agree with Steve, but Shoeless Joe was eligible for the Hall in 1936 and once again in 1946, and he was passed over by the electing committees at those points in time. It's in the article from MLB, and I have it on my phone, and I can quote the source right now. So I came with my notes and prepared. Pete Rose, it is a lifetime ban. And I am to say this with the utmost respect for those that have passed away. Pete's dead. His lifetime is over.
So, Dave, I'm gonna go on this question because that was going to be one of my next questions. So you led me into that perfectly. That was actually a quote from Manfield today saying,
Yes, it's Rule 21. It's Rule 21 of baseball. and
it says it ends upon their death.
Ends upon their death, and he is enacting and enforcing and making this rule more prevalent. It is Rule 21 in baseball. About the lifetime ban has now passed, being he is deceased, and he should be eligible based on a committee of his peers, that being the Hall of Fame Eras Committee at this point in time, to be elected. To go further, Bud Selig, former commissioner before Manfred right now, released the statements that he respects Manfred's decision regarding the removal of Pete Rose and 16 other deceased individuals from the ineligible list. Given my affection for my friend, the late Bart Giamatti, MLB 7th commissioner who disciplined Mr. Rose for gambling on his own team and all those years ago, I believe Bart would understand and respect this decision as well. Now, I have my own personal issues with Bud Selig and certain things that he did for the game, all-star games and such. But
we're not debating that here, though. We're debating.
We're not debating that here.
The steroid era.
But get off track here. I do respect Bud for coming out, and because he was very close with Bart. He served with Bart. He was kind of one of Bart's lieutenants in all of that. And I understand where Steve is going to go down, that this diminishes what Bart did as a commissioner lifting this ban. But I think in today's age, where a lifetime has now passed, and let's now recognize this player for his accomplishments in the game of baseball, betting aside or whatever, let's recognize Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe and these other 15 outstanding individuals for their accomplishments in the game of baseball, leaving it for their accomplishments alone.
Okay, so let me ask you my next question here, because it kind of leads into what you said about the lifetime ban. Because my question when I was reviewing all of this, and I'm going to let you both answer this question. I'm going to go to Steve first. It says lifetime ban, and when you die, that ban is lifted. My question is, whether you're alive or you are deceased, you still did what you did to get the ban. Nothing changes there. And one question that I have is, through all of these years, Pete Rose never admitted to it until he finally did admit to it. So on one side, Pete Rose admitted to what he did, owned up to it finally before he passed away. So does that change that in that sense? Because you still did it. And to Steve's point before, Shoeless Joe Jackson was proven innocent in a court of law, yet he still got banned for a situation where he was proven innocent in a court of law. So he never kind of should have been there maybe in the first place. So why does you dying change what you did? So Steve, I'll let you go with that first.
Greg, if we were 75 years removed from Pete Rose's passing, like we are with Shoeless Joe, I might have a different opinion. 75 years from now, none of us are going to be here to have this conversation anyway. It's not going to matter. But I think when you look at what Pete Rose did to baseball and tarnish the game, honestly think, and Dave's going to jump. Dave may come unglued when I say this. The second best hitter that I've ever seen behind Ichiro Suzuki. I think that when you look at what he did on the field during his play, you know what? Had a ton of hits. Most hits in Major League Baseball. When you look at the global game, Ichiro surpassed him. But when you look at what he did on the field, I think the one guy we have to ask in this is, what does Ray Fosse think? I mean, here's a guy who took a catcher out in an All-Star game.
That's when All-Star games meant something.
Well, that is true.
It's also back in the day in every sport we say, play hard.
Yeah, play hard, yeah. But I think that when you look at what he did on the field, even what he did on the field was overshadowed by what he did in a betting slip.
So
Or
let me
the
ask you that,
bookie.
Steve, with that, because that was my next question. I'm going to ask you. That's why I went with you first. And Dave, I'm going to let you rebuttal kind of both of these things in a minute here. How did Pete Rose betting on the game affect or tarnish the game of baseball in any way?
So here's the problem when you do this. If you have the ability to control the line, which he did as a manager, which is when he claimed he bet on baseball and bet on the Reds. So if you have the ability to control the line and you bet, let's just say the line was 1.5, and you're up 1 run late in the game, and you know the line is 1.5, you've got a run around third and 1 out, and you decide to suicide squeeze. You've now controlled the line and the betting line in a game. So you have power over the game. So that compromises the integrity of the game. That's where I have a bigger issue with what's gone on, is that he had the ability to control the outcome based on his bets. And that's where Major League Baseball, that's where you get Congress and everybody else looking at you going, there's a problem here, especially in a league that has antitrust exemptions. And we've gone down this road in golf with antitrust exemptions, and that the federal government is looking at PGA Tour because they don't have one. And do they really have one? Do they control golf? So, and do they have a monopoly? Major League Baseball has the monopoly. So when you start to compromise that integrity and you have the ability to make a call to move the line in a game that you've bet on, that changes the way Vegas is run. That changes the way Atlantic City is run. And as baseball has expanded now with gambling, and oddly enough, the first ballpark to have a casino in it is Cincinnati, which I find incredibly ironic.
Yeah.
So sports betting has changed. So that's
sports betting has changed.
That's
sports betting has
on.
changed.
I'm going to ask that question. So,
but when you look at what happened then, and you look at him having the ability to change that outcome in a game based on a call that he makes as the manager, that's where the integrity of the game gets compromised. And that's where I have a bigger problem, is that it's no longer the game and playing the game that has the outcome. It's someone in control who has a bet on the game that has the outcome.
Okay. So Dave, I'm going to turn to you now.
And Steve, and I'm going to pose this question, and this is part of my rebuttal. What's the difference between a suicide squeeze and a sac fly, or hitting the ball the other way to the second baseman with a runner on third if the infield's playing back?
Let's be real. How many people are suicide squeezing at that point?
But what's the difference? If you hit a sac fly, or you hit the ball to, runner on third, and you're a left-handed or right-handed batter, and the infield is playing back, and you hit the ball to the second baseman, you're scoring from third. It doesn't matter. That big red machine.
It's a whole lot easier to hit to bunt a ball than it is to, again, what's the hardest thing in sports to do? To hit a baseball.
Hit a baseball. Correct.
Actually,
have you seen how people try and bunt a ball?
Shot in soccer.
Yeah.
But
if to your point, there's multiple other ways to score that runner from third other than a suicide squeeze that can affect the outcome of a game.
Right.
You know that, and I know that. It's not guaranteed. A suicide squeeze isn't guaranteed. A sac fly, hitting the ball the other way, a passed ball. If there's a passed ball with a runner on third, that's not something you're controlling as a manager.
Well, Dave,
I 100% agree. Pete bet on baseball as a manager. I'm not going to argue that fact. He's come out and said it. I've met Pete. I have Pete's autograph. Him and Bob Boone. In that.
Say it, Steve.
Go ahead.
Drink.
There you go.
Yep. So, but at the same time, we're not talking about him as a man. I understand there's a sign posted, and Steve, you said this multiple times. We've had this conversation online and offline. There's a sign in every locker room: no betting on the game. I get that. The man is dead. Let us recognize him for his accomplishments in the game, for the major league and I get it. There's Japanese players that have out home run Hank Aaron. There are Negro League players that have out home run Hank Aaron.
Actually,
I get all
those
that.
statistics are now in the MLB. That actually happened earlier this year.
Yes,
But let me ask you this question, Dave. Along with this, so I see where you're going with this. So my follow-up question to you is, would you be in favor of Pete being okay to be elected into the Hall of Fame and not be banned as a player because there is no evidence of him betting while a player? He did it as a manager. So, like, he cannot go into the Hall of Fame, let's say, as a manager. Are you okay along that line, stating that
he was a horrible manager.
But that's my point.
But
like, are you separating
here's the thing,
two?
Pete. Yes, I'm separating the two. But Pete was one of the few. He was also a player manager for a short period of time with Cincinnati as well too.
Yep.
So there's
lost art in all of sports. Let's be honest.
Yes. So, and I'm going to be pretty sure he was betting as a player manager at that point in time.
Okay.
As well too. I believe in his book, he talked about that. I can't quote it. I haven't read the book in quite some time, but there's a fine line between what Pete did as a player and what he did as a manager. And I think, and I've stood fast by this. My dad, hanging out with Pete Rose upstairs right now as well too, stood fast by this. My dad refused to go back to the Hall of Fame until Pete was elected. And I believe in those terms that Pete, as a player, as an individual, what he did for the game of baseball as a player, as Charlie Hustle, as the Major League Baseball hit king, deserves to be in the Hall.
So let me ask this question. Hold on, let me ask this question here.
Yeah.
What do you want to rebuttal here real quick?
I think the question that needs to be asked is, do we think the Eras Committee or the Veterans Committee or whatever it's called today would vote him in? I mean,
you're leading to my next question. So let me get into that, because I'm gonna make this a two-parter, not just about that committee. I'm gonna talk about just voting anyone in general. So when we look at this, and in every sport out there, I have a lot of friends that work in professional sports, and you cannot, no matter what level you are in professional sports, whether you're a player, whether you work for the team, you are not allowed to bet on that sport. You are not allowed to, in some sports, gamble at all. That includes playing fantasy sports. Because of all of this, because of the point of like point shaving and influence you can have on the game itself and the integrity of the game. So Pete Rose,
how many times have we been upset at a running back for sliding at the goal line to run out the clock?
Exactly. But that's not why. I mean, because we're doing that. What I'm saying is that people that work in that industry know you cannot bet. It is a rule. You can be fired for it. You can do that. So Pete Rose broke a rule. I'm going to say that out there. And this is where I'm leading into your question, Steve, because I'm going to take it to the modern era where a lot of the voters aren't voting in certain players who they assume took steroids. Not that they have evidence of, not that they have, but they are kind of blackballing them because of the steroid era and not voting them in. So in contrast to that, do you think that A, the voters will vote him in whether he's banned or not, and B, if you think Pete Rose and these other players' ban was lifted, should be in, should there be an investigation into blackballing players who haven't been banned and haven't been proven guilty of anything besides the court of a public opinion?
Here's the problem that I have. I don't think Pete gets in, even at this point. I don't think the committee, I think when you look at the people that are in his peers that are on that committee now and the players that are in the Hall of Fame, I think that Pete gets punished just like Barry and Roger and Alex have gotten punished. I do. I think they have a hard time voting for him because of this. I really, truly do. And I think that a lot of people will be surprised when those announcements gets made, and they've already made the announcements for 2025. So we're waiting on 2026 at this point. I think you will be pleasantly surprised if he doesn't. I think there's gonna be a lot of people, Dave, you included, that will be surprised if he doesn't get in.
So Dave,
See,
you were shaking your head there. What do you say?
I'm on the opposite train of that, because I think the Errors Committee, the Veterans Committee, like you said, whatever you want to call it, those are old school baseball guys that respect what Pete did for the game. Now, that being said, I think this ban lift by Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred may change the public opinion of some voters on regards to the steroid era, but we're not going down that road right now. We're talking about Pete and Shoeless Joe and everything else. But I think those people that sit on the Veterans Committee, the Errors Committee, whatever we want to call it, have enough respect for what Pete did for the game as a player, as Charlie Hustle, as what he did, that he gets in.
See, I think they look at what he did off the field in as a manager, and it was too much of a black eye to the game. And I think that's where I don't think they vote for him. I think they respect the game too much to say we're going to vote for him at this point.
Nope, and I think the opposite.
Well, that's the point of this whole debate, is we know you think the opposite. You're not going to change each other's mind here. So let me ask you this question: that do you think, and now this is not on one side or the other, do you think that this ban lift for all of 17 of these former players or managers in there, they were waiting for Pete Rose to pass away to do this and do it as a whole lump, that this was never going to happen while he was alive because of the comment of after death? And this kind of opened the door now, because Pete Rose, to be honest, besides Shoeless Joe, was the biggest one that this was debated about with. So
100%.
Okay. Steve?
100%.
Dave and I will agree on this one. This will be the one thing we agree on.
I figured you would. But that's what I was kind of thinking. Like, they were waiting for this to kind of happen. So, it's something that's interesting. So now, with all of this, we just talked about, we've really stuck on Pete Rose. So I'm going to kind of shift towards that Shoeless Joe Jackson. So we talked about Pete Rose. Dave, you think, yes, he could probably get in. Steve, you think Pete probably not going to get in, just based on voter trend and what we're seeing. And I agree with both of your points there. I'm really going to take the middle ground here, but let's go to Shoeless Joe and the Black Sox. Do those players now get voted in by that legacy committee?
I think Shoeless Joe does, and I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in first here.
Yep.
I think Shoeless Joe does, and Steve and I will agree on this, because he was found innocent by a panel of his peers in a court of law, and it was that public opinion and the voting committee at that point in time that just lumped them in with the rest of them. That happens. I don't think any of the other players that took the bribe were good enough to be voted in, based on their statistics. Yes, as a team, they won as a whole, but Shoeless Joe was far and above the best player on that team. And I think all the rest of them needed that bribe in order to, get over that hump. Could we see one or two of them potentially get in? But no, I think Shoeless Joe was the most recognizable name out of all of them. I don't think any of them else get in, but Shoeless Joe, because he was the only one found innocent in a court of law.
I also think when you go back, it was the '99 All-Star game at Fenway. Might have been the greatest pitching performance in an All-Star game ever. It was done by Pedro Martinez, member of the Boston Red Sox. When Ted Williams came out wearing a Shoeless Joe hat and was very vocal about the fact that Shoeless Joe should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of respect for Ted Williams in the Hall of Fame and the guys that get to vote in that committee. And I think with Ted Williams having spoken up in 1999, we're talking 26 years ago that Ted Williams spoke up about this. I think that is why Shoeless Joe gets in, because of the respect everyone has for Ted Williams. And I do think, and honestly, and I'll be honest with you, if we were at that point where we go back to 99 and you had Ted Williams or you had Willie Mays or any of these other guys that were speaking up on behalf of Pete Rose, I think my opinion might be a little different. But when you've gone on so long for the lifetime ban, and you've really changed the description of the word lifetime ban, which is what Major League Baseball did up until today.
It's not a change of description. The word lifetime is the word lifetime.
I'm talking about the fact that up until today, they've really changed the word lifetime. Like, it was whose lifetime are we talking about up until today?
Is it now the lifetime of the game, or is it lifetime of the individual player that they're
right?
Talking
You're right. Yeah,
that's right. I see where you're going with this.
Like, Major League Baseball had changed the definition of the word lifetime because of what they did to Shoeless Joe, the Black Sox, and everything else, and the other players on that list. So all of a sudden, Pete Rose passes away, and now we're going to define what lifetime really is, and whose lifetime are we talking about? I'll be honest with you. I don't have a problem with Major League Baseball doing that. The problem is you've gone now against history of the game. And we talk about history, we talk about legacy, we talk about everything that's gone on. We talk about this in golf. We've talked about this with where the legacy is in golf. And that's where I have a problem, is that we've now changed what is lifetime. And again, do I think this should have been done long ago? If you had told me this happened in 1985 and you go back to 1985.
Funny, I was thinking the same year.
And they lift the ban on Shoeless Joe and the Black Sox because they had all died at that point. I don't think I would have as big of a problem today with this, but because of what they've done in history and because of what they've done with the game to now do this, that's where I have the bigger problem with including him in this.
So, Steve, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question here, because I really want to know the answer to this, because it would, and give me your honest answer to this. Big Papi becomes a coach in Major League Baseball. Okay?
Yep.
Big Papi bets on baseball as a coach in Major League Baseball. Should Big Papi be banned for ever or until he dies?
I mean, the terminology in baseball has been lifetime ban. I think the problem that you have there is you're talking about a guy who's already in the Hall of Fame.
I get that now, but I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to,
I'm saying before he got into the Hall of Fame.
Greg, you've been the moderator here. I'm going to throw this one to you. We have a Mariano Rivera situation that is going on in real life right now with his church and abuse and everything else. And we've seen what Major League Baseball has done to players that are accused of domestic abuse or anything else. How do you feel about Mariano in this situation?
So I don't think that I feel domestic abuse. If you are going down that route, I lose all respect for you in general. So that's kind of a different situation that's there.
Right.
I think that is a bad thing. So I lose respect for you there. I don't think that
but at the same time, if you get a lifetime ban, a lifetime ban.
But no, I'm not asking about a lifetime ban there. I'm saying that is, I am one that is, if Major League Baseball is going to ban you for something that is after your playing career, because he's not a player anymore or something like that.
He's not a player anymore. No.
That's, if it was found that he did this during his playing career and Major League Baseball says, hey, we should have caught this, we're going back and we're going to give him a lifetime ban. Let me finish my statement here. I'm all for that. If this happened after his playing career, you're not a player anymore. You didn't do that during your playing career.
Okay.
It is two separate things. That's like, that's basically the equivalent of a former job of mine firing me after I've already left that company and don't work there anymore. So, but I also say that if I'm a voter, I'm going to look at that and I might not vote you into the Hall of Fame because now I see your real personality there. And that's a different question as well. There is a lot of layers to this, in my opinion.
I understand the question that you asked. I do. And I appreciate the question that you asked because obviously I'm a huge Big Papi fan.
That's why I asked it.
I think, again, the challenge that you face with Big Papi and the question is he's already in the Hall of Fame. So can you take that away from somebody? They've never taken
No, I'm not taking that away. I'm saying, like, let's say he wasn't in the Hall of Fame already. So take a current Red Sox player and
go get Jason Varitek. And we'll go to Jason. We'll look at Jason Varitek.
Jason Varitek is a great one.
Yeah, Jason Varitek.
Or
most no-hitters in baseball.
Tied for the most no-hitters in baseball.
Tied for the most. Does have the greatest beatdown of Alex Rodriguez ever.
He comes, let's say he becomes a coach and he starts betting on baseball. Would you support a lifetime ban until he dies?
again, you cross the line. The sign's still in the locker room, and I 100% agree with it. I do. Like, now, that being said, Rob Manfred's career in Major League Baseball has been tarnished by a lot of things that he has done miserably wrong. He got the Astros thing completely wrong. I think we'll all agree on that.
What? No, what?
Yeah, not holding.
I don't have a trash can.
I was looking for a
in
trash
here.
can too. I don't have a trash can to beat on.
Not holding any of the players accountable for that was a huge, glaring mistake in Rob Manfred's legacy. So do I think
there's
that
going to
Rob
be a
Manfred,
book written one day where Jose Altuve is going to come out and said, "Yeah, I had a wire."
Right, correct. So, and he's also going to put in there a song from Skilo because he's still going to wish he was a little bit taller. But
wow, low blow.
But I also think that when you
went
look
right
at
over
Manfred,
my head,
and went over Altuve's too. I also think that when you look at what Manfred has done and rules that he has made, I mean, we can look back at what Bud Selig did during the steroid era and what happened during the steroid era with Selig and how he turned a blind eye. Again, I was a huge Mark McGwire fan. In the summer of 1998, saved the game of baseball. And they all turned a blind eye to it, and everybody knew what was going on.
How many other baseball players, McGwire and Griffey, have become Simpsons characters? Let's just put
Mattingly,
it.
Darryl Strawberry.
Isn't Strawberry in the Hall of Fame?
There's a whole episode.
I'll be honest
where
with
they
you.
all become baseball players.
Strawberry's
also,
not in the Hall.
No, you're right. I think Don Mattingly should be in the Hall of Fame, and I will say that.
And Mattingly should be.
Mattingly should be in the Hall of Fame. I will.
Greatest Yankees
Mattingly's
first
one of my favorite
baseman
players.
ever.
One of my. Nah, he used to be.
I also think, as a nod to the thank you that Bud Selig should write every day to Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, they should both be in the Hall of Fame. McGwire first. Sosa did do a few things outside of the steroids.
The corked bat.
The corked bat was kind of a red flag at that point. But, when you look at what those two did for the game, because, again, Nike was right.
As celebrated as it was doing interviews with Andro Testosterone sitting openly in their locker.
And they didn't come out and say, I didn't know. McGwire tried to come into Congress and say, listen, I was doing it. They were going to hold him accountable to it. And that's why he had the inevitable task of what he ended up saying in Congress that St. Patrick's Day, that they were all there. But I think that when you look at what's gone on with the commissioner and what he's done now during his legacy, I think long-term people will look back at Rob Manfred and look and say, you made some really gutsy decisions, and I don't know that I agree with a lot of them.
So he's not getting a public library named in his honor.
No.
Is this more a question to you of this is the commissioner that you don't like making a decision you don't like, and that's why you kind of lean this way? You just don't like the way he's handled this, or you just disagree with it altogether?
Sports commissioners in general have a thankless job. Like, name the last one that anyone likes.
The NBA commissioner. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
Adam Silver.
David that's Stern. The one that David Stern brought the NBA. But NBA commissioners actually have been well liked because the NFL actually, there were owners out there that tried to lure
Stern to the NFL.
Not Stern. Current
Silver.
Adam Silver.
Silver. They tried to lure Silver away because they don't like. Oh my God!
Goodell.
Roger Goodell.
Roger Goodell.
And all of
I
actually like remember.
I like Goodell.
All of them remember.
And then there's Gary Bettman,
the guy that broke the players' union.
Yeah.
I mean, Bettman did. He broke the players' union. Basically, made them a non-event in the NHL.
Back on track here as we wrap up here.
I think that when you look at what I mean, there's a lot of criticism of Jay Monahan. You look at any of these major sports commissioners, there's criticism from them across the board. I think that when you look at what they do, they have a thankless job. No matter what decision they make, they're going to piss off 50% of the people. It's like a president. Just because of what they decide, they're going to piss off 50% of the people. And I think that when you look at where are they going and what are they trying to do, I think that when you look at the decisions that Major League Baseball is making, I think you have a hard time looking at the history of the game and thinking that great decisions are being made. I really do. I still love the game. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna sit down and watch a game tomorrow night. But you know what I mean.
I know this is not going to change either.
I'm the watch a doubleheader tomorrow. So on the flip side for me, and my quick rebuttal here is we're living in a different age in society now than where even Bud Selig and Bart Giamatti, where those guys were. We're living in a different age of society with social influencers, with 3 guys sitting here doing a podcast about it. We're sitting in a TikTok age, and everything is more accessible to everybody now. And I think commissioners nowadays, much like politics or whatever, play to the way that social interactions and everything else are going. You know, is this right? Is this wrong? We're going to leave that to voting committees to decide. You know, I'm on Pete's side. I'm on, Steve and I are both on Shoeless Joe's side. That is not for us to decide in the court of public opinion anymore. That is to be decided behind closed doors of voting committees. But I think commissioners and everybody else live in the court of public opinion more so than those voters do behind, those ballots are public pretty much anymore. But commissioners nowadays live more in the court of public opinion, where memes and TikToks and, everybody else is going to scrutinize every decision that they're going to make. And I think where we are right now, I think he has made the best decision for baseball in its current state on regards to what constitutes a lifetime ban.
Dave, I'm going to ask you one question. I have one question before we wrap.
Well, I got one. I want you guys to do one more thing before we wrap. So ask your question. Then
does the decision today draw fans to the game?
I don't think fans today, I think fans like us care about this decision, but I don't think the 20-year-old fans have any idea of what's going on with that decision. Go ahead, Greg.
Because I agree with you that this is not, anyone who's not a fan of baseball doesn't care about any of this. So it's not.
But here's the problem that I have. Decisions to be made of how do you get more fans to the game.
But yeah,
that's not what we're talking about.
That. But this doesn't change that. This is not a thing that's going to affect that. My question is to you, Dave. Do you think Major League Baseball loses fans because of this decision?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
100% absolutely not.
Okay. With this, I want you to each make one last pitch before we close up. This is going to be our closing statements here. Steve, I want you to make your pitch for why, really quick. Make it quick. Do not drag on about this. Closing statements real quick. Why Pete should not be in the Hall of Fame for the voters coming up. And Dave, your rebuttal as to why they should. Steve, go first.
I'm going to make it real quick. He compromised the integrity of the game. End of story.
And Dave, why should he be in the Hall of Fame?
Major League hit leader, lifetime ban. He's dead, lifetime over.
He's dead, lifetime over. That's all right. That's a great way to leave with that.
Wow.
So, thank you for watching tonight. This has been a great debate. This is going to go on in baseball too. I don't think this solves anything. I think that you both have great opinions on this. I don't think it helps grow the game, but I don't think it affects that in any way. And Dave, I do agree that if you are a true fan of baseball, you're going to let this go eventually, and we will move on and forget this ever happened. But with that, cheers, everybody, and thanks for watching.
really fortunate.